Hello, and welcome back to the Wishing You Well podcast, where we help you navigate your wellness journey each and every week. I'm Amy Albero.
And I'm Catherine Van Eyck. We are both licensed therapists and talking to you today about how to handle family drama. Because we all know that that's not easy, and we all encounter some sort of family drama at one point or another. So we're going to be talking about it. And of course, we'll talk about ways to, what you can really do to help, if anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It's something we all have in common. It's just the varying degrees. So I'm glad we're talking about this today. But of course, before we get into our dramatic discussion, we have to check in. Living full and well life is put together, authentic.
We feel it.
Take care of ourselves. So how's it going? How you been doing? How's your self-care?
My self-care for the last couple of days has altered because of what I've been talking about in the last episode. I changed up what I'd been eating, especially and drinking in the mornings, based on this whole liver cleanse thing to help get rid of this pregnancy rash that I was told will not go away until I give birth. And that is too far away for me to be okay with. So I was not taking that for an answer. And I was like, I'm taking matters into my own hands here with help. So I have been sticking with this whole liver cleanse thing, something that's supposedly very okay for pregnancy, because there are a lot of liver things that are not okay for pregnancy. This one is, and I've been doing it and it's been working. It's been fading and it's been getting less itchy and it feels like a miracle, but I've been doing this stuff. So that's been my self-care. That's been very, very intentional, very much self-care as healthcare the last few days. So it's been honestly, it's been more of a 3-course meal, I'd say, than anything.
Yeah. Well, I love self-care as healthcare. Love that. But yeah, I mean, as you were describing in our previous episode, it is an overhaul of especially your morning routine. So I can understand why it's a 3-course meal, and also the different ways, the different areas of kind of well-being that it's also impacting in a positive way too.
Absolutely. I mean, I felt awful last week. I felt like I didn't want to be in my skin anymore, kind of awful, and literally wanted to scratch my skin off because it was so itchy. And of course, that was affecting me mentally. I was worried about and ruminating all of a sudden about the rest of the pregnancy and how it was going to be. And now I'm already I've switched that to more optimism and more excitement already. And that is just in a matter of days. And so that's really, really amazing to feel that switch in my mental thoughts and feelings. And now, of course, because I feel better, I'm doing more of what I like to do. That also makes me feel better. So all of it has been adding up and to make me feel better.
I'm so glad.
Thanks.
Yay.
Yeah. How about you? Checking in with your self-care.
Overall, self-care has been pretty good, and in a lot of ways a blessing. I feel like I've had a lot more downtime that I don't typically, and so I've been really trying to take advantage of that. And it just so happens that I had a couple of unexpected things happen at work where I'm covering for 2 unexpected leaves and then 1 expected person's time off. So I'm covering for 3 people's jobs right now. And I'm going on vacation at the end of next week. And so I typically have a tendency to just cram as much in as I can before I go. And so now I'm trying to think about my future self-care, my future well-being, and thinking okay, I do have a lot more on my plate this week and next week and for the foreseeable future. How can I still be protective of my time? And so I was kind of writing out today things that I can do to set myself up for success, like who I can delegate what to, when I can block off my time, because my time, as for many of us, right? Like we deprioritize ourselves so quickly. So I've been trying to like proactively go into my calendar and block off time for me next week, because there is that much work that I can fill every hour of the day. And I should not do that. And so I'm trying to like, I know myself, like I know the monster that like resides in me that just like can like gobble up all the work. And that's not helpful to anybody, including me. So I'm trying to like be proactive about that in the best way possible. So yeah, main coursey self-care.
What are some things you've done so far that have helped?
Well, I started making a grocery list for me to prep some meals that are like, because usually lunch will all like definitely slide off my calendar. So I want to make lunch a non-negotiable. And in order for me to do that, they should be meals that like I can eat easily, that don't need to be microwaved, that I can eat in a meeting, like that kind of stuff. So I started making a grocery list around that. Similarly, like easy to prep dinners, because again, dinner, I typically after a stressful day would just get home and say like, screw it, I don't care. And like eat something that probably won't make me feel very good, or not eat. So I've been doing that. And then I've reached out to a couple of people on our team to help fill in for whether it's meetings or joining me in meetings, so that I'm not like, again, doing things completely by myself. So those are some of the things, like trying to, again, like we talk so much on this podcast about like self-awareness and, you know, knowing ourselves. And this is one of those times that like I really want to use my self-awareness for good and for proactivity, and not just like, oh, I did it again kind of attitude.
Right. You're really like trying to learn from those other experiences. Like this had not happened to you. I mean, this is not the first time this has happened to you.
Correct.
And so like, can you take from those other times what do you remember needing? What do you remember could have helped? And it sounds like you're really doing those things.
Yes. And the other thing I'm going to do, I plan to ask you this off air, but I'll ask you it on air, is I need to also ask people to hold me accountable to taking breaks, or just like, you know, checking in with me and that kind of stuff. Because as you and some others that we work with know, like I'm actively trying to not overfunction. And so this is again my kryptonite. So I need people to help me stay honest with myself.
No problem. I got you.
Thanks. Yes. So yeah. All right. But I will keep you posted, both on recording and not, about how I'm doing. I will be honest about that, but I'm sure I'll learn something about something I missed or something I didn't anticipate, which, you know, I'll just keep in mind for the next time.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. It's not gonna be perfect. We get it.
Right. But
as long as it's a little bit.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm shooting for. Not perfection, just like a little bit of progress.
Yeah.
Super cliche. Mm-hmm. Okay. Are we ready to get into our episode?
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, family drama.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Not funny, but in preparing for this episode, you know, as we do, I, you know, put into good old Google, you know, family drama. I always like, I'm just so curious what is the first thing that comes up when we record or plan these episodes. And it just was brought to my awareness how much of popular TV and movies centers around family drama. I mean, it's a whole genre of movies and TV. Like it's something that we see.
Family drama.
Yeah, literally. It's something that we see everywhere. And it just really solidified this idea that, or this fact that family drama does exist, like for everyone at varying levels, maybe not as dramatic as, you know, what we're seeing on our screens, but we can certainly look to TV and movies for like a little bit of a hyperbolized view of kind of some of the things that we're talking about. today?
Well, sometimes it's exaggerated, sometimes it's not.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not point. And you were like, oh God, this really like hits home.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. So when we are talking about family drama, what are we talking about? What are we describing?
We're talking about all of those times where you get a pit in your stomach when you are either picking up the phone with a family member or going to see family, going to visit them, going to a holiday, or just like thinking about all of the things that have gone wrong or could go wrong based on experience, based on the past, based on these repeated patterns that are just seemingly never ending.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. No, I like that you are describing it as kind of two different things. One is maybe the patterns and the dynamics that exist within these interpersonal relationships, and then also the subsequent feeling that we experience, which then probably feeds the dynamics and interpersonal relationships. Like it is a cycle. There is a pattern to it, or patterns of interaction to it. But yeah, I mean, and family drama, it could be again so varied, whether it's, you know, a parent child interaction that might seem a little tense, or maybe a parent is overbearing or something like that, to, you know, a very gossipy family member, to, I don't know, season 2 of The Bear, when we're seeing full on family drama unfold at the, you know, holiday table. So it really can vary, but you're right. It really has to do with, when we're talking about it today, we're talking about, yeah, that kind of icky, tense, heavy, feeling laden experience that can come with a family interaction.
Well, and like that's the commonality that we're all experiencing, right? Like you just pointed out different ways that this drama can come about. And it can be short term, it can be this long term thing. It can come on really fast. It can come on like, you know, it like clockwork kind of thing. But what that common thing is that feeling that we're all getting, that how much it stresses us out and how much we feel like we have absolutely no control over it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and it is a lot of times what can bring people into therapy is in dealing with family issues, family drama, family stressors. I mean, because of the impact that it has on people. It's such a, I feel like so many times, I was just talking with someone this morning whose main goal was like, how do I navigate this stuff with my family, or the feelings that I get around my family, so it doesn't kind of catapult into a bigger issue. So it's so prevalent.
Yeah. And like sometimes people come in looking for that help and they see how much of a problem that is for them. And sometimes it's a little more discreet too. And sometimes it's like somebody coming in for therapy with something, with like a presenting problem that seems like it's unrelated. And then when you really peel it back with them and you really get to know them, then you find out, oh, there's all this stuff going on with your family. And that relates to how you're feeling at work and how you're feeling in your other interpersonal relationships and your romantic relationship, that like sometimes these things are so intertwined and like so in depth also. But if we're not thinking about it, because we're just kind of thinking like, well, that's my norm, that's my family, that's not what I'm here for, until you find out like, oh, wait, that is what I'm here for. That is what I really need help with.
Yes. Well, and I think we've talked about like that concept in our adult children episode. I think sometimes we are so used to the drama is the norm, right? Like we don't even know that it's drama, like, or we don't even know that it might not necessarily be helpful or healthy or has an impact on us, maybe until we might leave and get different perspective, or maybe a therapist is helping us kind of gain more awareness or perspective about the relationships in our life. Like, again, if it's so insidious and a part of a family, you might not be even name it as drama. It just is family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So true. So true. And like when you say like it can happen when you leave, it can happen like when you have some sort of big life transition. Like maybe you're going off to college and you get exposed to all these other people and all these other like where all these other people came from and their backgrounds and their families. Or maybe it's when you get into a relationship with somebody and they start noticing like, hey, your family does this. Did you know that? And you're like, oh, they do. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Never thought about that. Yeah.
Can you think of maybe situations or circumstances, even times of the year that family drama is more prevalent?
Sure. I mean, election times, holidays, any kind of family big get together.
Mm-hmm.
What are some others that you can think?
Definitely those. I was thinking, weddings, any sort of like life stage transition. You were just mentioning, like maybe going to college or, births, deaths, those experiences in the family life cycle stages tend to like be a great breeding ground for drama, as well as the year annual stuff like holidays or the elections. Like why do you think it is that drama is exacerbated at these different points?
I mean, I think it's like, even though we're coming from a family, no matter how close you are with your family, no matter how much you do get along in other circumstances, like you're different from your family. Your family's different from you. And those differences are only shine through that much more at these big events, because maybe we're not talking about politics all the time, but in an election time, it might creep its way up. And then that's when all of a sudden it's like, oh no, me and my family, we are so different. I think this way, and they have this value, and I have this one. And like, if it is a wedding, then you're kind of might be thinking like, I want this to go exactly the way that I want it to go. But if I'm thinking about this in like a more proactive way, then I probably am thinking about how, this parent or this aunt or uncle or the sibling is going to do X, Y, or Z. That's going to make it that much more difficult for it to be, the perfect way that I want it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's all about difference.
Totally. And I guess as I asked the question, I was like thinking of the answer for myself too. And I think along with what you were saying, like all of these things, all of these points in time are stressors. Not that they're necessarily stressful, but they are stressors, that they stress the system, because maybe it is different than or like out of a normal routine, or maybe it includes more people, or just different questions have to be asked. Like, and so whenever there is stress on a person or on a system, we're going to see things maybe get shaken up a little bit and uncovered. Things kind of show on the surface that we don't typically get to see. And I think when we're more stressed, we're more vulnerable to react or to engage in a way that we don't typically. And so I think, like you're saying, across all these different circumstances, not only are they stressful, but they also give greater opportunity to shine a light on maybe values or values misalignment, things like that. I can't tell you the family drama that got started for both my brother and I when we both, for our weddings, made a choice to have it be adults only. Like, and that was the drama that got started from that. It was huge. And again, it told me a lot. I guess it told them a lot, maybe about my values and vice versa. But it still, yeah, created some conflict, created some drama there.
So in that circumstance, you were the drama starter.
Oh, yes.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was stressful, especially as a people pleaser. Like, you know, I wanted everyone to be happy and I didn't want anybody to be upset. And I wanted to include as many people as possible. But I was in some ways like very grateful for like the reality of the situation is that the venue that I got married at got capped in the number of people at a relatively small number. And so I had like an easy, convenient fallback, but it was very stressful to navigate. And I felt like I had to apologize the entire time. And I was frustrated because I felt like people were making like mine and my husband's wedding about them. And yeah, so I think I had a harder time with it than my brother. My brother was like, you know, sucks for you. Like, I gave you kind of a night out without your kids. Like, let's go. Let's have a good time. Where I was more like, I'm sorry. I wish there was more I can do, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine like when you were on the other end of it, when it was your brother's wedding, where you didn't necessarily, you didn't have that control over it. Like you had control over this, but you also weren't willing to budge. Like you were like, I'm sticking with what I want. And this is it. Whereas when your brother was doing it, he had a much different approach than you did. It was kind of a similar scenario, but like, how did you handle it then when you weren't the one that was making the decision?
Well, you're making me think of an interesting thing that can happen in family drama is that it's not always directly raised to people. And so like for my wedding, I wasn't hearing directly from people that they were upset. I was hearing from people that were hearing from people that they were upset. So for my brother's wedding, I heard a lot more of it directly. Like, you know, your brother's not, you know, inviting kids, like what's going on with that. So I felt like I had to deal with it more head on for something that was none of my business than when it actually was, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's what, like this indirect communication is what can fuel drama a lot of times, or maybe perpetuate drama, because some of it that happens is indirect, kind of gossipy as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and sometimes like depending on the family, right? Like sometimes people can be like super direct, super like in your face about something. And sometimes people can be more secretive about it and more like passive aggressive about it. And either way, it's hurting no matter what way we're getting it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think it is that like there is something that keeps the drama fueled? Like if we're thinking about maybe people that like maybe aren't as direct, or people that like do a lot of like kind of gossiping or shit talking, and again like kind of have this like family drama underneath the surface. Like what do you think it is about that like keeps people in it? And I don't know. I know it's a big question. Maybe it's like, go ahead.
I mean, I wonder if it's like, on the one hand, people like things the way that they like them. And so they're going to kind of push their agendas no matter what it takes. And when it comes to family, there's seemingly this like, I can keep pushing and nothing's going to break because you have to be a part of this. You have to unconditionally love me anyway. You know, you have to forgive me. You have to agree at some point. Like there's maybe that aspect to it. And then there's also that other one that's like the less aware you are about it, the more it's just functioning the way it's functioning. And like, even though people are unhappy, it's just how things work. So that's just the way it is.
Right, right. I mean, the idea of blood is thicker than water, I think, is such a huge component when it comes to family and family relationships. And I think that's why people might just swallow it, or, you know, as you were kind of alluding to just now, like there is this element of safety of like, if I keep pushing, or no matter how hard I push, we'll still be family. Like there will still be some love there, no matter what. You know, there's that maybe idea around it. But I do think that there is an aspect of like some loyalty that might exist within families. Again, that blood is thicker than water concept of, I do just need to suck it up because family is everything. Again, that's not everybody's value, but for some families, that is what keeps things perpetuated. I also think it's reminding me a lot of our gossip episode from, you know, earlier on. Like, I think there is something that feels good about talking shit or stirring the pot that probably has very little to do with like the actual drama at hand, and more of like the person talking or stirring, you know, that maybe it's a way to distract, again, away from like their own stuff, their own family, their own whatever. That I feel like it is some not weird, but it is some form of distraction, entertainment, that kind of thing as well. Or just something in common to talk about.
No, you're right. Sometimes it's like people are just so inclined to stir it up. People are inclined to like to just spot something and have to tell somebody. Mm-hmm. And there's that aspect to it as well. And then there's the other part that's like, okay, there's this family that thinks that they can push and push and push. And sometimes things do break. Sometimes people do cut themselves off. And that doesn't end the drama. Mm-hmm. That like makes it maybe not necessarily worse, but it still makes it quite alive. If somebody's not talking to somebody, that is loads of drama.
Yes.
Happening.
Well, okay. So as the family therapist in the room, I want to talk more about this, the concept of cutting off, right? Because I feel like sometimes there is this idea of like, I know the solution to deal with all the drama. I'm just going to cut everybody off and have that be that. Like, is that the answer? Like, no, you're shaking your head. No.
And like I said this in our conflict episode too, that like that cutoff really isn't a solution for anybody unless there's abuse. And I think that people have this idea that if I'm not talking to them or if I'm not seeing them, then the problem doesn't exist anymore. But it does. And more often somebody cuts themselves off like non-verbally, like maybe it's just geographically, like I'm just going to move away and I don't have to deal with this. And then they return maybe for a holiday, or maybe they don't do that. Maybe they just return for a funeral or something. And lo and behold, there's the drama all over again, because it didn't actually do anything, you leaving. It just put it on pause. And maybe that seems like it works for you, or it seems like it works for somebody, but it really doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And I feel like with cutoffs, it doesn't resolve anything. It doesn't solve anything within that relationship or set of relationships. It's like playing whack-a-mole, where like you get one and then another one pops up right away. And so I feel like
of a game.
It really is. And so are cutoffs. Like it doesn't actually resolve anything. We see like maybe similar patterns show up in different relationships, or because we are kind of taking a simple, I won't say easy, but simple way out, we're not actually able to like form the skills needed to deal with conflict in a way that we need to be as adults in that exist in interpersonal relationships. And so, yeah, cutting off it might like give you that immediate relief, but it doesn't actually serve you at all.
Right. I mean, and this kind of like leads us into what makes it difficult to manage family drama, because boundaries are a huge aspect of families and communication with families. And
that's like
so
the second B word. It's like a swear word for some families, boundaries.
So true. So true. It's easily said. It's easily said. But like somebody's thinking like cutoff is my boundary. That's not necessarily the only boundary that you can take, even if it feels like it's the only boundary that you can take. Mm-hmm. But the boundaries that make it so difficult to manage family drama, or like hear about family drama. Maybe you're not like managing it, right? Like you're just in it. You're a part of it because you're a part of the family. Maybe it's really difficult because the communication you're getting around it is constant. Maybe people are texting you. Maybe people are calling you. Maybe it's not just when you see your family once a month or every other week or whenever it is. It's in your face. So that makes it really difficult for you to balance the drama and, your life, like the life that you have going on. That's already probably really challenging. Mm-hmm. So yeah, communication is a huge factor.
Totally. No. And I think, bringing up, the idea of boundaries and oftentimes in families where there is a lot of drama, the boundaries tend to be more diffuse or tend to be not as healthy. And again, I said boundaries is like the second B word because I think there tends to be a reaction when boundaries are put up, which makes it harder to kind of follow through on the boundary that you want to create. So it makes it extra challenging if that is true in your family.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can try to put up a boundary all you want. And if it keeps getting shot down, you can wear away. Mm-hmm. And if you're not standing your ground in that boundary, people can really just eat away at it. There's again, more pushback. And because that's against the norm. That's against what the family's used to. So setting a boundary doesn't always solve it. Setting a boundary often makes things more difficult, although it also can help. But sometimes there are cultural barriers to setting a boundary. Like if you come from a family that is more diffuse, like you're saying, then that boundary is such a foreign concept that they don't understand it. They don't even get why you could be wanting that, why you could be wanting space from them, why you could be wanting to spend less time with them, why you could be wanting to not share certain things with them. They're going to look at that and think like something's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, right. And I think, again, we, in our boundaries episodes, like boundaries can be viewed as a sign of disrespect. And so again, if family is a value to you and your family members telling you that acting or saying something in some type of way is disrespectful, then that can create some internal conflict for you about how you want to proceed forward. So, boundaries in a lot of ways are the solution. And like, we know that they can create, especially immediately, more friction. Another thing related to just families in general and what makes it difficult is that a lot of families are really conflict avoidant. And so there isn't a whole lot of talking about it. It's just like maybe something ends, I won't say resolves itself, but like the drama has subsided and then like things just move on, or gosh, I'm having this like immediate vision to Succession, the awesome show we love, Succession, and the way that they kind of dealt with some of the family issues at times is like kind of just brushing it off, like whether it's they are who they are, or this is just how dad is, or like we just don't talk about these things. That's also really common and perpetuates drama, and also makes it hard to address and deal with and manage, is if you're like the only one with the sign up that says like, let's work on this. If everyone else is like, what, who, problem, us? Mm-hmm. No, we're good. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't want to rock the boat. All of that kind of stuff can get in the way.
So true. Yeah, a lot of avoidance, a lot of deflecting, mm-hmm. but more secrecy, like with what you were describing before. It's like people are talking about it, but people aren't really talking about it. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How are you supposed to actually manage it? How are you supposed to actually try and help the situation, or help you in the situation, mm-hmm. when that's the kind of response you're getting?
Right. Well, and I think, and I know we'll get to kind of what can be done and ways that we can kind of shift out of family drama. But the reality is, and we talk about this a lot on this podcast, especially when it comes to relationships, is that whenever anyone is trying to maybe make a shift in their system, and maybe in like a family that's more avoidant, to kind of address the drama, like it's going to create more friction, and people want to avoid that. Like, we don't want to be in conflict. We don't want to be in discomfort. And so like people staying in the like uncomfortably comfortable place within their family is so typical, because you know this normal. You don't know what a different normal could be.
Yeah, very true. So what do we do? What do we do? What do we do with all this drama? How do we actually handle it? Help.
I know. It's the big question. And it's something that we, again, have talked about a lot. I feel like whenever we've talked about any relationship related dynamics, is to understand that within a family system, everyone's got a contributing role, plays a contributing factor to the current dynamics that exist. Maybe sometimes that role is bigger or smaller, depending on the family and on the dynamic. But if you're listening to this and you have family drama, guess what? Sorry to break it to you. You probably are playing some role in perpetuating it. And I say that with no criticism, no judgment. It just is. It's in terms of like human interaction. That's just like the way it works. And so I think the first step is our favorite: self-reflect and try to think about recent interactions that you've had that were drama ensued, and try to think about what you did, how you interacted, how you engaged or didn't engage, and try to bring some awareness of your role in the drama.
Yeah. And with that, thinking about your triggers to the drama. Mm-hmm. What happens when it comes up? Where do you feel it? When does it come up? Is it coming up when you're only at these events with your family, or is it coming up randomly when you're just, something reminds you of it? Or if someone does text or call you about it, what are the existing triggers? And then what's that like? What is it doing to you? Are you fuming? And you get irritable at work? Are you getting, frustrated with your partner? Are you feeling like you can't do much of anything because it's just bringing you down so much? Like what does that look like for you? And once you kind of unpack what your role is in it, thinking about that and how you're kind of showing up in it, like, because those triggers are essentially how you're showing up in it, because you're being reactive, you're getting reactive, you're feeling your feelings when all of this is going on. And that doesn't have to be what happens going forward. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you want your role to be in this? What do you want your role to even look like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that as a self-reflection question. Because yeah, we do get to choose I mean, we might have put ourselves in a role or feel like we were assigned a role, whether it's the referee or the peacemaker or whatever that is as it relates to drama, but that doesn't necessarily mean we are committed to that for the rest of time. And so yeah, I think that's such a good question, is what do you want your role to be? And and what would that actually look like to execute? Like if you were to show up as if you were in that role, yeah, what would that need to be? How would you imagine that the version of you showing up when you are seeing drama play out or getting one of those messages? Like what would that version of you really want, or how would you want that version of you to really engage, or again, or not, in those interactions, to really play it out, and to sit with the feelings of discomfort that might come up with that, whether it's that someone might be upset with you, or you know, I don't know, there might be other consequences that are unfavorable, to kind of practice sitting in that, so that you can better tolerate it.
Well, and I love that you pointed out some roles that people might be already playing or kind of like swept up in, that referee role. Also, like the therapist, like you could be this therapist in your family without actually being a therapist. Or sometimes you are a therapist and end up being a therapist in your family. What are some other roles that people might take up?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're asking me.
Yeah.
Well, of course, there's like an instigator
Mm-hmm.
that can happen. Like the pacifier, the peacemaker, is such a prevalent one. The caretaker, in a I know there's a name for it that I'm not remembering right now, but like there's also, sides that can get taken, like the ally, or like maybe it's like the friend within a family conflict. Like you might be like I'm imagining a conflict between mom and dad, and you're the child, and so you might take on the quote unquote friend role of your mom, of like, yeah, tell me everything. I'm here for you, like that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, there's so many different kinds.
Mm-hmm.
And then like in picturing what this role could be, what are some maybe examples of what it could turn into?
I guess my immediate thought is just a lot more. I had like this immediate image of like just more independence, like meaning that, like you were saying before, there's so much reactivity that comes up within drama and conflict. And with reactivity, there's a little bit of an interdependence or codependence in terms of regulating and emotionality. And so I think what I'm envisioning is that whatever role the person takes, it comes from a grounded place where they can be autonomous in deciding how they want to proceed forward. And again, every circumstance or dynamic or family, that might look different in terms of what feels good to you or what role you want to opt into, but to intentionally opt into a role and to do that from a grounded place, not just kind of like picking up the slack or of like, okay, this is what mom does, this is what brother does, this is what sister does, and this is what I do. Like to kind of just be more intentional about the role you're stepping in. I think that's when I say independence, that's what I mean, that it's not a reaction to what's going on. It's a response that's grounded to what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think that does. And the independence factor, I think, could also relate to how we get so reactive because we're so invested and so responsive to what other people are doing. Mm-hmm. And when we have this more independent role, we're not necessarily, like going back to what we were saying about cutoff, like we're not saying like you can't be involved, you can't play a role, but the role that you play, how can it still represent you? How can it still represent your values and what's important to you, and how you'd like to proceed, rather than the I'm just getting swept up into the regular cycle of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You did mention boundaries before. And so what do you think in terms of boundary setting, communicating boundaries as a way to, I mean, I think we're in agreement in terms of like they are a way to manage family drama, but like what could that look like?
I mean, I think that sometimes we have this automatic response that it's like automatic. Like we think that we have to respond. We think that we have to respond right away. We think that we have to attend something. We think that we have to be present in the drama in order to be present in the family. And like we were saying before, boundaries are not easy to set. Boundaries are not something that you can just do and then all of a sudden you changed everything and there's no drama for you anymore. Maybe it exists for everyone else, but you don't have to deal with it. Like boundaries are hard, and we have a two-part podcast episode. So 2 episodes all on boundaries because there's so much about it. It's so difficult to implement them that if you pull yourself out of that kind of like autopilot kind of response, then you can start to ask yourself, do I have to engage in this? Do I have to attend this? Do I have to participate in that particular activity or event? There are certain things that you can start to wonder even before you try to set up like no, because no is really hard to get to. Yeah. And we don't have time to get to talking about all the no's that you could be saying.
Yeah. No, you are correct. And I think sometimes with boundaries, people feel like boundaries are things that I communicate to others so that they know not to cross them. And I think people forget that we can set boundaries just through our actions, or maybe different actions or reactions. Like, for example, the boundaries can be with yourself. Like, I'm not going to respond right away to a text from so-and-so until I take 5 deep breaths or until the end of the workday. Like, you don't necessarily need to tell someone that. You can just do that. That's just like acting on a boundary that you create within yourself. And so I think that's sometimes like what I feel like is a misconception about boundaries is that they always need to be communicated verbally. I mean, sometimes they do. They can be like, please don't talk to me about this. I really feel stressed when you do. Sure. And another form of that same boundary would be to leave that conversation if it comes up. Like, I'm feeling really stressed by this. I'm going to go talk to so-and-so, or internally to know this is really stressing me out right now. Hey, brother, I have a ton of laundry I need to catch up on. I'll talk to you later. Like, it could simply be removing yourself from a situation without necessarily like giving a lecture about what the boundary is and why.
Yeah. And when you do, like when it happens to be those verbal types of boundaries, you and I know, and we've kind of touched on this, that like, you're going to get that pushback. You're going to get that person that says like, you don't want to talk about it? Well, we're going to talk about it anyway. And these things don't stick right away. These things don't stick after the second, third, 15th, 100th time. Sometimes it takes a really, really long time. So as you begin to set boundaries, just know that the patience and the kind of like backbone you're going to have to grow to handle what happens when you set those boundaries also takes a lot of time and effort and strength from your part to keep doing it, because eventually something shifts, something clicks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, right. Yes. I mean, and I think 2 things from what you said, like having that expectation is so important because the first time you set a boundary, I mean, it's going to feel shitty to everybody involved, and it won't stick, and it will be pushed and all of that stuff. It's stressful. It's work. And so one other thing I would suggest is a skill called coping ahead. And it's to think about, to, again, visually imagine yourself maybe reacting, responding differently. Maybe it's setting these boundaries, to put yourself in those situations, kind of literally in your mind, think about what it is to say these things, do these things, not do things, and think about how you can prepare mentally, emotionally, with some sort of skill in order to set yourself up for success when you inevitably will be in that position. I mean, I said it a few minutes ago, a little tongue in cheek, but maybe it is getting into a practice of, when I see so-and-so's name come across my phone, I'm going to take 5 deep breaths, kind of getting yourself to a more regulated place, because like keeping the boundaries consistent is key and really hard. And so how to make it a little bit less hard is to stay as regulated as you possibly can, in order to have the strength to continue to hold the boundary.
Absolutely. Ooh. Another thing to go back to is to think about what's in your control here, because all you can really do is raise an issue, talk about something that you're having a problem with, talk about something that you want to set a boundary with. And you can also try to understand why people are doing what they're doing. That's it. Because you can't change everybody. You can't make everybody agree with you. You can't make everybody drop it and move on. That's like all that's kind of in your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And I think that might be disheartening on one hand to hear, of like, I can only control my actions, my reactions, my, all of that stuff. And so like there's so much that's out of your control, but at the same time, let that also be liberating, that all that other stuff that clogs up your thoughts and like gets you riled up in your feelings, like you don't need to worry about that, because you don't have control over that. Like if you just stay rooted in the very few things that you can control, like life will feel less stressful to you. And so like, yeah, lean into that. Like think about what you can control and just focus on that. Free yourself from the other stuff. Easier said than done.
And with, of course. And with what you can control and what you can do is like also plan. You can plan to put these actions into place. You can plan and rehearse what you might want to say to somebody. And that also is liberating, to give yourself that time and that space to be intentional and get serious with what you actually want to try to get out of this. Mm-hmm. And like emphasis on the try is like, or emphasis on the try, because you don't know what's going to happen from it.
Right.
But what you can do is make that plan, rehearse it, figure out what you want to do when something does come up. Do you want to leave the room? Do you want to deflect what they said? Do you want to put that boundary up? Do you want to what?
Mm-hmm. Right. And what you're describing is very different than the like internal shower arguments people have when they're like steaming up, like literally and figuratively. What you're describing is so much more reflective, and so much more, as you're saying, planful. It's not reactive. And I think that is like really key, especially when we're trying to change any pattern or any behavior. It's like any repetition that we can have around it through the rehearsing, like you're saying, the better.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think the last one that you can do is to seek out support around the family drama. You do have people that aren't involved. You have your friends, you have potentially your partner, your significant other. You have people that want to help. And maybe that help is just an ear. Maybe that help is just to lean on. And I'm saying just, but like that's really impactful to have those people in your life that you can confide in and you can lay some of this on. And of course, sometimes that support is therapists or our therapists. And like we said, we hear about this all the time. This comes up with clients. I mean, I almost want to say like every single time I have a session with a client, because it's that frequent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nearly every single time. If not every single time, every single client, very often.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, right. It's prevalent. But I guess this is definitely a good plug to, along with this episode, go back and listen to our boundaries episode. We'll go back and listen to our conflict episode, adult children episode. Like those, all of this is kind of interrelated here. It's a big feat to kind of put a pause or to shift family drama, any family dynamics. So definitely go check those out as well. Okay. We made it. Thank you if you've listened the whole way. We really appreciate you listening and following along, for all of your ratings and your reviews. Thank you. And thank you for the follows on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to also share these episodes with anyone you think they might resonate with. Maybe someone in your family could benefit from hearing this. I don't know. So go share it with them. Also, don't forget to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Revive Center for Wellness, where we have our weekly episodes of our bonus podcast, Reactivity TV, where we share our therapist takes on trending TV and movies. And some other really great wellness content is up there too. Also, follow us. What's that?
And this one. This
yeah.
There.
And yeah. Come check us out. Come check out full episodes of our podcast on YouTube as well. Yeah, see our faces, interact with us. We'd love for you to see us and to hear your comments, your reactions to our podcast as well. You can also follow us on Instagram at Revive CFW. You can follow Catherine at Catherine Van Eyck, me at Amy Albero LCSW. Check out our website, revivecfw.com, and send us emails to wishingyouvell@revivecfw.com. Thank you again so much for being here. And until next time, we are wishing you well.